Now after they had left, they were the wise men, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and went to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." When Herod saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, he was infuriated, and he sent and killed all the children in and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old or under, according to the time he had learned from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled because they are no more. When Herod died, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel, for those who were seeking the child's life are dead." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was ruling over Judea in place of his father, Herod, he was afraid to go there. And after being warned in a dream, he went away to the district of Galilee. There he made his home in a town called Nazareth, so that what had been spoken through the prophets might be fulfilled. He will be called a Nazarene. The Gospel of the Lord. The gospel lesson we just read is only found in Matthew, so it only comes up in the lectionary once every 3 years, always the Sunday after Christmas. I've never preached on it before because I always took the Sunday after Christmas off. The part about the angel warning Joseph and then Joseph taking Mary and the baby to Egypt is a pretty well-known and important part of the Christmas story. If you're on Facebook, you've probably seen posts reminding people that Jesus began his life as a refugee in a foreign country to which his family had fled because of the violent, life-threatening conditions in his home country. Fortunately for them and for the world, they found safety and security in Egypt. No one put them in cages, separated the family, or tried to send them back to where they came from before it was safe. The Facebook posts never mention the very specific threat to the family's safety, though. The scholars and church traditions don't call this passage Jesus' refugee story. It's called the slaughter of the innocents. If we confront that aspect of the story, we confront some horrific and very difficult issues about why and how it came about that Jesus' life, human life, began this way. There is hope in the story, though. There was a wonderfully written exposition of that hope in Friday's New York Times. If you want to delve into the story in more depth, if you want to find that hope that's hidden within it, I recommend you Google it and read that op-ed, because that's about all the delving we're going to do on this story today. I mean, we're still celebrating Christmas, right? We are still celebrating the singular event in all of time that rocked the cosmos, that came when God became human in the form of a newborn baby. God in Christ who reconciled sinful humanity to God's self. A one-time event that is so awesome, so full of grace and hope that we need to, and we ought to cling to it, hold on to that part of the story as long and as hard as we can. Christmas was just a few days ago. It's not done yet. I don't think we need to dwell on the really hard stuff in this story today. Just my opinion, and I get to decide what the sermon's about. So, we're going to look at the letter to the Hebrews. It's not a sentimental or nostalgic story. It doesn't ring as a Christmas story to us. A lot of people have never even heard of the book of Hebrews, much less associate it with the birth story. The author is writing to an early Christian congregation that is becoming more and more afraid. Afraid because the authorities suspect them of being insurgents. Afraid because their neighbors and friends and family are turning on them because they won't just conform to the dominant culture and worship Caesar. They need some bucking up. The letter is considered by scholars to be one of the earliest systematic expositions of the doctrine of the incarnation, the understanding that in Christ, God became human. It is also the clearest and most definitive New Testament exposition of the belief that we are saved, we are cleansed, and reconciled to God through Christ's birth, death, and resurrection. An event that occurred only once and was most assuredly for all of humanity. 7 times in this letter, the author asserts the two-pronged fundamental doctrine of Christianity. It happened one time, and it happened for all. In our excerpt today that Claire just read, she writes, "This he did once for all when he offered himself. He destroyed the one who has the power of death, that is the devil, and freed all who were held in slavery by the fear of death." All who were held in slavery by the fear of death. There's a show James and I like to watch on Netflix. The title of it is Lucifer. When it first aired, I got the usual email from Netflix saying, "We have a new show we think you'll like." They think I'll like every show. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to watch some creepy show about the devil, probably something straight out of the book of Job or something where Satan goes around to and fro across the earth, wrecking people's lives. No, thank you. Then I was talking to my sister on the phone one day, and she asked me if I'd ever watched it, and I said, no, I'm not watching a creepy show called Lucifer. She said, it's actually pretty good. First, he's really handsome and he's funny. But there's just something sort of redeeming about it. Now, my sister doesn't generally use words that have a clearly Christian connotation like redeeming. And she might not have even said that, but that's what I heard her trying to explain to me. So I said, okay, we watched it. And it's actually pretty good. It's not for younger audiences, and it's mainly just entertaining fluff. But every episode, I'm impressed with some theological expression that is just right on the mark. I wouldn't say Lucifer himself is redeeming, but maybe in the show, he's being redeemed. I don't know. We're only halfway through the first of 4 seasons. Before the first episode ever aired on any network, an organization I had never heard of before called the American Family Association launched a petition to prevent it, to cancel the show before it ever got started. The petition proclaimed with great authority and great dismay that the series would glorify Satan as a caring, likable person in human flesh. Like, why would that be a bad thing? If I'd known about the petition at the time, I probably would have started watching the show to begin with. Instead of being a show that glorifies debauchery and ridicules Christianity, it is, I don't want to overstate it, but it is a show that kind of shines a light on the complicated relationship among God and Jesus and all of humanity without ever specifically mentioning it. The devil doesn't really come up that much in the Bible. Most of those stereotypes about the devil come from a particularly bizarre section in the book of Revelation, a particularly strange and often indecipherable book in general. My opinion, just saying. But in the letter to the Hebrews, we get no suggestion of that fire-breathing, green-skinned creature with a lizard's tail and horn. Instead, what we get is an amorphous entity that is the source of all that causes fear within the heart and soul and mind. Fear that can become enslaving. But because God became human in Jesus Christ, God knows what it's like to fear for your life. God knows that fear can be debilitating. God knows that we all experience fear, from the top 1% to the poorest Guatemalan refugee. God knows our sorrows, our hurts, our suffering, and God suffers with us. And God comforts us when we suffer. I'm not going to lie, the incarnation can be hard to get our brains around, and most of us humans are hardwired to try to figure things out. I remember years and years ago at a dinner table, and I don't remember who all was there, but Paul Wynn was a confirmand at the time. He was there. James and I were there. Davis and Virginia Thomas were there. And we were talking about theological things. And Paul said, what I can't really understand is how could Jesus be fully human and fully God at the same time? And I was like, oh man, I don't know. And Davis Thomas looked at him very seriously and said, you mean that you can't figure out something that no theologian, no scholar, no brilliant interpreter of the Bible has ever been able to actually explain? I was like, whew. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to believe it. You can have doubts. You are saved by God's grace, not by what you can or can't believe, not by what you do or don't believe. In a book titled A Testament to Freedom, Dietrich Bonhoeffer calls the incarnation God's holy mystery, a mystery that need not be and really should not be unraveled by the mechanizations of the mortal brain. Instead, he suggests the following. Look at the cradle. In the body of the little child, in the incarnate Son of God, your distress, anxiety, temptation, and all your sin is borne by Christ, forgiven and healed. In the name of God, the Creator, Redeemer, and Comforter. Amen.